Let's turn to Steve Nelson. He's the White House reporter for the Washington Examiner. So, Steve, a confrontation seems to be coming between the president and his own Justice Department this week. What do you predict could happen?
This demand for the Justice Department to look into the alleged informant is really hot off the Twitter feed. The White House and the Justice Department, they have not responded to requests for comments from what I'm sure is about 200 reporters wanting to know what this is about. President Trump clearly is frustrated with this report that there was an informant speaking to members of his campaign. He has called for the release of documents to congressional investigators. It's conceivable that this demand for an official look into this will take some different form, perhaps some suggestion that the Inspector General review this. Perhaps that the documents be provided to Congress. We just don't know yet.
Well, the documents, I mean, Nunez, they went up to the office the other day to try to see these. They're not given the documents. And Congress, they say, is being stonewalled about this and raising troubling questions about the Bureau potentially using an informant during a presidential campaign. But others say it was targeted specifically to look at potential Russian influence in the campaign, in the election, and not the campaign itself.
Right. Well, the congressional investigators haven't been able to get much information on this. The Justice Department saying that they can't really out the informant and the source here. But that, of course, is not going to satisfy people. And there's talk of holding Attorney General Sessions in contempt. Devin Nunes, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, suggesting today that there might be more than one informant even. So this is a story that's not going to be over quickly. So when the president says he's going to demand tomorrow, do you know what type of steps that would take precisely in terms of telling the Justice Department what to do? And as you say, what if Attorney General Sessions or Rod Rosenstein, what if they push back and say no? Frankly, it's unclear. President Trump, if you go and look at his Twitter feed today, there were many tweets angry about the Russia investigation, an alleged double standard with Hillary Clinton, the delivery of documents to congressional investigators. He's clearly very frustrated with this, and what this official look into the matter entails, it's unclear. I mean, I don't know that the White House press staff themselves know at this point what exactly the president would like.
Well, you have the IG report that's due momentarily on the Hillary Clinton email situation, and critics say, you know, the contrast is just stark. Hillary not put under oath, the other people not put under oath versus the Trump folks. And here's what Kimberly Strassel has written in the Wall Street Journal just about this alleged informant, saying, quote, "This would amount to spying, and it is hugely disconcerting. It would also be a major escalation from the electronic surveillance we already knew about, which was bad enough. Obama political appointees rapidly unmasked Trump campaign officials to monitor their conversations, while the FBI played dirty with its surveillance warrant against Carter Page, failing to tell the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court that its supporting information came from the Hillary Clinton campaign. Now we find it may also have been rolling out human intelligence, John Le Carre style, to infiltrate the Trump campaign." Others observers, though, say it wasn't to infiltrate the campaign, it was to investigate the allegations. I mean, is there a semantic difference between, let's say, going and trying to meet with Carter Page and having this alleged informant meet with him, meet with Sam Clovis, another foreign affairs advisor, as well as meet with George Papadopoulos individually? Is it a semantic, or it doesn't matter whether they're individuals or campaign officials?
You know, it's been interesting to read the reporting on the meetings that this Cambridge University professor had with the three Trump campaign advisors. Just mentioning Russia in passing, you know, mentioning stolen emails in passing. It's unclear how thorough his investigating was of their potential wrongdoing of these various Trump advisors. There's certainly going to be more interesting details to come, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's going to be the understatement, I think, Steve, of the year. We'll see what happens. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Of course. So for more on this, let's bring in John Malcolm, because he's a vice president at the Institute for Constitutional Government at the Heritage Foundation. So, John, as a expert in the Constitution, you're also a former deputy assistant attorney general. Do you think the FBI was using this alleged informant? Do you think it was appropriate?
Well, look, this investigation, to the extent that it was ever on the rails, is certainly threatening to come off the rails. So there was, it seems, a foreign intelligence investigation, not a criminal investigation, going on involving George Papadopoulos and Carter Page. And before a criminal investigation was initiated at the end of July, this Cambridge professor is off speaking to Papadopoulos, Carter Page, and Sam Clovis and asking questions about the Russians. This is very, very dangerous territory. So
why would that be dangerous territory? Let's say those three potentially are colluding or have information. They've all denied wrongdoing. Let's say, some would say, wouldn't the FBI have a legitimate reason to investigate this?
So FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, is designed to root out people who either wittingly or unwittingly are agents of foreign powers. And so to the extent to which you think that the Russians had actually co-opted somebody to work for them, then this is legitimate. But one, this bleeds into a criminal investigation, and it involved one of the major political parties in the heat of a political campaign. So this is fraught with political peril, and these decisions are being made by political appointees. When you add on top of that, you know, all that has come out about Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and sort of an anti-Trump bias by some of the people who were leading this investigation, it becomes particularly problematic. It's still early days. We don't know whether this guy was being paid to be an FBI informant, whether he was off doing this on his own, whether he was the only one, what intelligence he was gathering. But at least if you believe what has been reported to be true, he not only approached these three people and were asking them about, you know, their contacts with the Russians, but he was offering to pay Papadopoulos a few $1,000s to write a paper.
Yeah, apparently did. He apparently sent him $3,000.
Yeah, no, that's right. And that's the kind of thing that informants do, or that, frankly, spies do, to try to rope in people to cooperate with them. And George Papadopoulos, it seemed like, to run at the mouth, and he found a willing person when he identified Papadopoulos as the guy to approach.
Now, Democrat Adam Schiff, congressman, is denying there's any wrongdoing here. I want to get your reaction to what he is saying about that this morning.
Sure.
This claim by the president, the suggestion by Giuliani that there is a political spy embedded in the Trump campaign is nonsense. And you hear it in the same terms that Trump often speaks, which is people are saying, or I'm hearing, or we're being told. That's another way of saying this is patently untrue, but we would like to spread it anyway.
You know, I asked Steve earlier this question. Is there a difference, or is it just semantics, between the FBI sending an informant to talk to the individuals like Carter Page or the campaign? Or are they both the same?
Well, in this case, these individuals had one common thread, which was they were all involved in the campaign. And while two of them you might be able to characterize as peripheral players, Papadopoulos and Carter Page, since they were voluntary advisors, you couldn't say that about Sam Clovis, who was the co-manager of the campaign. So there was no way to embed somebody into this campaign or to have somebody snooping around this campaign without getting into the tactics of what the campaign was doing. So this was an investigation that was fraught with political peril from the beginning, whether it was initiated to try to root out what the Russians were trying to do to interfere with the election, and it's quite clear that they did try to interfere with the election, but it was done so seemingly against one campaign and in a way that has left the FBI once more open to the charge that they have been politicized and weaponized the criminal process.
But at the same time, doesn't the Bureau and doesn't law enforcement have a duty and an obligation to protect the Constitution and to root out objectively these type of allegations?
They do. So they had to handle this kind of thing very, very delicately. They could have at some point gone and talked to the Trump campaign. They refused to do so. And now they're going to be caught in a bit of a bind where they're going to have a president who's going to say, wait a minute, you had somebody on the FBI payroll, possibly, snooping around my campaign. Tell Congress about it so that we can find out what happened with respect to this election, lay all of the cards on the table. And the FBI is going to say, well, we have a confidential source, and, you know, we have an obligation to protect that person, even though the person's name has now been widely disclosed. So this is going to, you know, pose a standoff potentially between the president and the FBI director, Chris Wray, and, you know, possibly Rod Rosenstein and Jeff Sessions. I don't know what's going to happen.
And also between Congress and the officials. Here's what Devin Nunes said about that this morning. Take a listen.
Sure.
If they ran a spy ring or an informant ring and they were paying people within the Trump campaign, if any of that is true, that is an absolute red line. There is not an honest person in this country who can believe that taxpayer dollars going to fund this ring and operate like this, like what's said in the New York Times, I think it would have quite a bit of detail on it. If any of that is true, this is a red line in this country. You can't do this to political campaigns.
So how do you think this will play out this week, finally? And does the president, does he have the power to declassify all this? Doesn't he have that power?
He does. And he could also fire Bob Mueller, and he could shut down this investigation. Whether he will choose to do so and take the political hit that involves, I don't know. He has not done that to date. But asking the FBI to disclose a confidential informant is a bit of a risky business. But look, I think Devin Nunes is onto something. I mean, it's one thing to look at an individual and say they're a potential Russian spy. It's another thing to let this go on and extend the tentacles of this investigation deep into the Trump campaign. It's unclear at this stage just how deep those tentacles went, whether this one informant was the only person, whether there were others snooping around, but it's very, very dangerous, and once more has left the FBI vulnerable to attack of having been politicized.
John Malcolm, thank you for your service to the country, and thank you for your insight today.